All right. Welcome back into another edition of Jake's Takes. I'm your host, Jake Masucci, and we had an unbelievable college football playoff national championship. This was flat out incredible, really an unbelievable game to watch. Michigan is your national champions, and man, what a great way to start out. My first year covering college football, having my favorite team, the Michigan Wolverines, go all the way. And something, me being a Michigan fan for a long time, it's just a really great feeling, unbelievable feeling. Being a Michigan fan, there's just been so many ups and downs and so much scrutiny about like no playoff success. Before that, so much scrutiny about not being Ohio State, and then finally getting over the hump. Really, just an unbelievable feeling. If you're a Michigan fan, if you're from the Michigan area, it's just really cool that they were able to get the job done and get it going. So I'm going to go through the game a little bit, talk about the ins and outs, what I saw during the game, and then we'll kind of call it a wrap. This will be a shorter podcast because I'm recording this at 11:30 and I'm a little tired. So I'll talk about the ins and outs, kind of what my takeaways from the game were, and yeah. So let's get right into it. Michigan wins this game 34-13, really an unbelievable fashion. I'll kind of go through each drive, kind of like I did last year with some of the NFL playoff games. So let's get right into it. Start the game, Michigan got the ball, and they went on an 84-yard drive, really running the ball extremely well. Corum had a couple great runs out there, and then capping all off on a 2nd and 14 at the Washington 41. Donovan Edwards went for 41 yards and scored a touchdown. Him being able to break that hole, it was kind of similar to how the Ohio State game was 2 years ago, where he kind of just broke that hole in Columbus. I think that was actually a year ago. Yeah, it wasn't this past game, but the year before when they were playing Stroud, and he just really just flew down there and was able to get that touchdown. It was a huge start for Michigan, really put all the momentum on their side. Washington did respond, though, going on a long 14-play, 67-yard drive and really getting the ball going. They were using Dylan Johnson, who on the first play of the game actually hurt himself. Like Michigan's defensive front was very physical throughout the whole game. Mason Graham had a great game. Mike Sainristil, I still don't say his name right, and Will Johnson were unbelievable in the secondary, and we'll get into that stuff as well. But on this drive, Penix was really throwing the ball, getting Dunze involved, getting McMillan involved. They were trying to use some different types of runs on this drive to kind of take the pressure off of Dylan Johnson, because Johnson did come back into the game to run the football, which credit to him, because it's so difficult to be able to do that and still be effective in that sense, because you could tell like he was just so banged up from everything going on with him before. So credit to him there. And Michigan was able to get the stand. Washington was within the 10, so it was a huge stand in order to force that field goal. Having a 14-play drive and only getting 3 points out of it, it's really killer for the offense. So that was a big stand by Michigan, and that made it 7-3. And then Michigan had another great drive, and they did this in 1 minute with 4 plays. They ran it with Corum for 3 yards. Then JJ was able to hit Roman Wilson for a big 37-yard gain. JJ threw it incomplete, and then they gave it to Donovan Edwards for a 46-yard touchdown. I mean, really just an unbelievable drive, and Michigan starting out the game really flowing. And then the defense really came in and forced Washington to struggle a little bit with a 3-and-out. Like Penix had a 5-yard gain on a run. Dylan Johnson couldn't run the ball, and then Penix threw it incomplete threw it past to McMillan for about a 2-yard gain. Michigan's like coverage and ability to get to the receivers throughout the whole game was really impressive. Their tackling was on point. They had a couple plays where it was like, ooh, you probably should make that tackle. But overall, I thought their tackling was really good. I talked about a lot in that Alabama game. They were really impressive in that department. But, they forced Washington in this game to a lot of long third down. So then with their zone, they were able to just converge on like shorter passes. And that's what they were able to McMillan on this play. The next drive, Michigan had a 5 play. This kind of ended the first quarter, a 5 play drive that led to a field goal. They were able to get kind of relatively close, and JJ had a 3rd and 4. It was the first third down of the game for Michigan, and they couldn't hit Cornelius Johnson. Cornelius Johnson, I thought had a pretty solid game. He had 2 receptions on the first drive and had a couple receptions throughout the game. He had a big drop later in the game, but overall, I thought he had a solid game. And Michigan just putting a statement on Washington with a 17-3 lead. And then Washington went down. They had a solid drive going, and they were going for it on a 4th and 7, I believe. Yep, it was 4th and 7, which was an interesting call. 10:27 left, 17-3. Kalen DeBoer felt like he needed to put some momentum on, and they had Ndunze wide open on the edge, and Penix just couldn't hit him, and that was part of it. Like, Michigan's defense was just kind of confusing him with some of the blitzing patterns that they had, and also just made it so uncomfortable for him. That little line really struggled to handle the defensive line. Mason Graham was unbelievable in the game. Grant on the end was unbelievable for Michigan, and the O-line just struggled. You saw a lot of false starts and a lot of panic from that Washington O-line that we're not accustomed to seeing them do. So that was really killer and kind of got Washington off their edge and allowed Michigan to really get in their heads. That 4th and 7, like, Penix had Ndunze wide open on the edge. And Ndunze, I thought, did an excellent job of actually getting open and getting past Will Johnson when Will Johnson had him. I thought Ndunze was probably the toughest cover that Will Johnson's had, and they played Marvin Harrison, who's probably the best receiver prospect that they have, like, that I've seen coming into the draft. But I think Ndunze is right up there with him. Like, I think Ndunze is a flat-out unbelievable receiver, and he proved it. Like, he was open a lot today against a very good secondary, and I just think he's an excellent receiver. But Penix wasn't able to get him there, and that was a big 4th down stop. After that, Michigan went with a 3-and-out. Blake Corum ran for no gain, and Washington kind of figured out some ways to bottle up the run, pretty much starting this drive, because Michigan was averaging 19 yards per carry in the first quarter. It went down to 4 yards per carry in the second quarter, 4 yards per carry in the third quarter, and then I think it went up a little bit in the fourth quarter, but we'll get into that stuff. Michigan went 3-and-out, was forced to punt. JJ had an incompletion to Colson Loveland, and then an incompletion to Cornelius Johnson as well, which led to a Doman punt. Then Washington also went 3-and-out with 3 plays, 3 yards. Really what happened was Penix was sacked by Kenneth Grant, which was an unbelievable sack from him. He just went right in, kind of like really hit him hard. And then after that, Penix threw it incomplete to McMillan, and then that leads to a 3rd-and-22 where Michigan can play that zone, that soft zone, and then like converge. And that's kind of what happened. They passed it to Dylan Johnson, who went for 15 yards and forced a 4th-and-7. So then they got a punt. And then Michigan went 3-and-out also, with a solid run on 1st down. 2nd-and-2 led to OG getting a 1st down. So actually it wasn't a 3-and-out. They got some yardage. This was a drive where OG was involved for 2 plays. It led to a long 3rd-and-8, which then they decided to run with Donovan Edwards, and which led to a 4th-and-2 where Michigan wasn't sure if they should go for it. It was kind of that range where it was out of field goal range. So you shouldn't really trust your kicker, or you shouldn't really punt in this scenario. It's probably a go for it scenario. And JJ went to Roman Wilson. Excellent play by the linebacker. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but it was absolutely a huge play because it turned momentum completely and led to a Washington drive. It was an 11-play, 61-yard drive for a touchdown. They really went down, and when they needed it, they had a 4th-and-goal near the end, and Penix saw a hold. Will Johnson held Ndunze. I told you about Ndunze being a tough matchup for Will Johnson, and he's able to hit McMillan in the end zone for a touchdown. And just like that, end of the first half, it's 17-10 in a really, really back and forth first half. It felt like Michigan just had the edge. It felt like Michigan was setting the edge, and it was like you weren't sure. You could definitely tell Washington was getting some momentum, and it was like, okay, they could probably come in and win this game, like, or not win this game, but make it a close game in the second half. You just weren't sure what was going to happen. And then Washington gets the ball right away, and the first play of the second half, Michael Penix throws an interception to Will Johnson, and you're like, oh, that changes momentum completely. And Washington's defense, though, did figure out some stuff against the run. I was right about the adjustments. Like, Kellen DeBoer is so good with those adjustments, offensively and defensively, and they were able to get into the gaps and really stop Corum and stop Edwards and make it more difficult for them to run the football. They forced Michigan to a field goal, and then Washington went right down and kicked the field goal also. So you got 13-20. And it was 13-20 for a long time. There were a lot of punts back and forth. Michigan punted the next drive, then Washington punted, then Michigan punted, then Washington punted, Michigan punted, Washington punted. And that led into the fourth quarter where it's still 20-13. Time's running out, and then Michigan goes on a long drive. It felt like a long drive. It was a 5-play, 71-yard drive that was actually only ended up being 2 minutes, but it really just completely shifted momentum, completely. 1st and 10, I'll go through each of the plays. J.J. McCarthy hits Colson Loveland down for a 41-yard gain, and people, they weren't sure. They were like, oh, man, like, JJ's not really doing much. They can't get the pass going. They can't get the run going. How are they going to win this game? And then JJ uncorks that to Colson Loveland for that 41-yard gain. Then Corum goes for 3 yards, and then JJ hits Roman Wilson for a solid gain. And that was a great pass by JJ because he was able to get out of the pocket, wait for Roman Wilson to go, and then finally when he's open, he hits him. And Wilson goes for a solid gain, which makes it 1st and 10. Corum goes for 3 yards. They give it back to Corum again, and Corum finally hits the edge. That Michigan O-line was great blocking, especially in that first half. They set the tone immediately, and then in the fourth quarter, you could tell the Washington defense was really just exhausted and went into it, and Michigan was able to continue their blocking scheme and get going. 27-13 it now leads to, and it seems like Washington's like falling apart a little bit. Washington starts another drive. It's just a 6-play, 45-yard drive, and they're starting to drive a little bit. They're getting Dunze involved. They're getting their guys involved, and then they're forced for a long 4th and 13 after a full start, which puts him back on 1st and 10 makes it 1st and 15. He passes it. Penix passes it incomplete. Then Penix passes it complete to his running back, Will Nixon, for only 2 yards. And then that leads to a 3rd and 13, long 3rd and 13. He tries to fit it into McMillan, not there. And then Penix goes for McMillan again, picked by Mike Senra still. He returns it for 81 yards, and then Michigan taps it off with another Blake Corum touchdown. And just like that, end of the game. And Penix was just beat up after this game. My thoughts on this one, really just unbelievable performance from Michigan. Completely. Their defense showed to be the best defense in football. One thing I was nervous about for this defense was that defensive line against the O-line of Washington. I thought Washington could be able to control that, which is why I had this being a much higher scoring affair. But Michigan showed that they were able to combat that and be the better line up front. And I really think that was an important step for Michigan in order to win that game. And they did it fantastically. Really the better defense, and it just was all over the place. That defense showed that they were the best in the country, and one of the best we've seen probably in a while. I think Georgia's had some defenses where it's like, okay, this is probably like the top dog when it comes to defense, but Michigan's defense this year, you got to admit, one of the best we've seen in a while. I think it's definitely up there with those Georgia defenses that we saw. So, I mean, really impressive stuff from Michigan here. Unbelievable defense. My reaction to Washington, Roma Dunze is a guy. I think he definitely should be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I really think so. I think he's clearly receiver number 2 and is just a flat-out monster and is going to be the same way in the NFL. I think he's very good. And Michael Penix, I think he's a first-round talent. I think he's a late first-round talent, probably second round, because we've seen him. That's pretty much an NFL caliber defense that he just went up against, and he kind of struggled. But he's definitely, I think he's more equipped than a lot of the quarterbacks right now in the NFL. We I saw a stat, heard a stat the other day where it's like there's been a total of 68 NFL quarterbacks that have played this year, which is just a flat out insane number. So I feel like Penix is better than a lot of those guys that got an opportunity to play. So I do think he would be worth like a late first round pick if you're a team where it's like, okay, we're not sure if we trust our quarterback, but we can have some depth here and see if Penix can win this position, because I do think he has the talent and the capabilities to become a starting quarterback in the NFL. I just don't see him being like a top dog. Same thing with JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy has all the tools to be a above average quarterback in the NFL, but it's going to take some time. So I think both of these guys need to sit, really understand coverages and understand those different looks. JJ, I just think he needs more polish. He needs more time. I think it would really benefit him to come back to Michigan and not have a coin-led team, so then they can kind of experiment with their passing and kind of changing the offense so like it's more JJ driven rather than like run driven like it's been the past 2 years. That's my take on JJ and Penix. Looking at the Michigan defense, Will Johnson and Graham, when they're ready, because they're not draft eligible yet, but they're going to be unbelievable draft picks. Like, I think Johnson probably would be a clear number one corner when he goes out. Graham could be a clear number one defensive lineman when he goes out. So I think those guys are just flat out insane. And the fact that Michigan's bringing them back is going to make them scary, no matter what Harbaugh decides to do, no matter what Jesse Minter decides to do, and no matter what JJ decides to do. I think those are the three decisions when you're looking at the Michigan future that you got to look out for. What will JJ decide to do? What will Harbaugh decide to do? What will Jesse Minter decide to do? A lot of people already think Harbaugh's going. I think Jesse Minter is going. I think Minter is going to have opportunities either as a college football head coach or maybe even an NFL football head coach. I mean, you never know. Like, this guy's a young talent that has a savvy mind for defense, and the NFL is kind of in love with those young minds that have a savvy for offense. But I could see them, especially after this year and seeing some quarterback deficiencies, being like, okay, maybe we have to rely on some defensive knowledge, especially with the Ravens' defensive tactics being so, like tough for NFL teams right now, which we'll get into with some NFL content later in the week. But, like, I think Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald could be some NFL names to watch out for. And then Jim Harbaugh, of course, is probably going to be the number one NFL name to watch out for, especially with the NCAA coming down on them. I did say that I probably think he's going to leave. And I think winning this championship kind of solidifies his time in the NCAA. And I think if he gets the right job, he's definitely going to go. And they're definitely going to have to pay him a lot of money. I think I saw a report where Michigan offered him like 120 mil, something like that. So it would have to be substantially more than that, and a pretty solid deal. But overall, this was really just an unbelievable college football season. I got to watch Washington play in person, which was unbelievable. This Michigan team is just flat out incredible, and I'm so happy that they got to win it all, man. Like, I've been a Michigan fan for a long time, and it's just really cool to finally see one of my teams that I've rooted for forever finally win it. Like, it's just a cool feeling to have that happen. So I'm proud of Michigan, I'm really happy that they're going to do it. And JJ McCarthy's jersey will be going right there. What we're doing on Jake's Takes is every time somebody wins a championship, and I'll get a player of theirs and their jersey and then throw it up there. So JJ would be the next one. And then we got NFL playoffs coming up, so we'll get some NFL playoffs stuff going on. And college football is not going anywhere. That's the first year we were able to cover college football. I only really brought on Connor and Jonah for college football. I'm hoping to get some more perspectives kind of in the future. But overall, this was a great first season of college football, and what an unbelievable championship that we had here.